Jon Bernthal's latest Punisher spin-off promise confirms the one thing I absolutely needed from the upcoming MCU release. Jon Bernthal's newest comments about the MCU's upcoming The Punisher spin-off confirms it will have the one core focus I think it absolutely needs, despite the franchise's prior handling of other Netflix heroes making things less certain. Historically, the Punisher is more of a standalone character in Marvel's comics, shows, and movies. This is partly because of the character's nature and general desire to be a one-man army, but also because the level of violence and R-rated antics in his comics tend to make him a more adult character than many Marvel protagonists are traditionally depicted as, making crossovers complex. Marvel's Defenders timeline shows themselves reflect this, as Jon Bernthal's Frank Castle is at first depicted as an enemy of Matt Murdock in Daredevil, before the pair come to a somewhat more amicable understanding, though this requires several near-death experiences beforehand. That said, Daredevil's return in the MCU timeline with Daredevil Born Again has brought back the Punisher as well, something that's been revealed to also be leading to an upcoming Punisher spin-off, which Jon Bernthal has said some promising things about. The Punisher is one of Marvel's best shows of all time. While much of the focus when it comes to Netflix's Marvel shows is, not unfairly, on Daredevil, The Punisher is another example of just how good superhero television can truly be. The Punisher makes sure to keep the no-holds-barred brutal violence the comics are naturally associated with, but also balances this with ensuring that Frank Castle and the rest of the cast feel human and like they could appear in real life. As an end result, The Punisher has some real emotional weight, as much as it also has an appeal due to its action-packed nature. Jon Bernthal's Punisher first appears in Daredevil Season 2 before his own solo series, and watching this debut is key in terms of understanding story aspects, like his bond with Karen Page. Perhaps the most impressive part of The Punisher is how it explores the moral complexities around Castle's vigilant quest, in a way that other superhero releases can't, due to either the no-kill rules of their heroes or their general moral standing. Though Castle is clearly portrayed as having the moral high ground compared to characters like Billy Russo, the series makes sure to show that the Punisher is motivated often more by a thirst for violence than anything, and that there's more to his antagonists than being evil for evil's sake, even if their motivations often only make them seem worse. Jon Bernthal's latest comments about the MCU Punisher spin-off promise it'll keep the darkness of the original. In a March 2025 interview with The Hollywood Reporter, Jon Bernthal shed more light on what to expect from the upcoming Punisher spin-off, which will come in the form of one of the MCU's special presentations, akin to Werewolf by Night and the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special. While Bernthal's main focus was on his excitement about the chance to get to bring Frank Castle back for his own solo project following Daredevil Born Again, his comments also repeatedly reinforced that one much-needed aspect of the original series will return as well. After addressing how grateful he was to get to bring the character into the Marvel spotlight once more, Bernthal also mentioned the spin-off is not going to be easy, it's not going to be light. The actor went on to elaborate that it's going to be dark. Frank has no interest in breaking out the darkness. It's not going to be easy, and topped this off by underlining that it will not be Punisher light, I promise you that. Given how frequently the darker and more grim nature of the release is teased here, it's safe to say that the upcoming MCU release isn't going to be a softer take on the character and his story, following Daredevil's MCU return initially gaining some flack for its lighter fare and stories, with Charlie Cox's hero helping Peter Parker after his secret identity became public or cavorting with She-Hulk. It's nice to hear concrete confirmation that Frank Castle's own reappearances will get to stay as dark and brutal as his storylines in Daredevil and The Punisher themselves were, since both Daredevil Born Again and the Punisher spinoff are clearly intended to focus in on mirroring the intense fights and violence of their predecessors. Castle's road forward has the potential for more bloodshed seemingly than ever. An MCU Punisher spinoff is a uniquely promising project for the franchise's future. The Punisher is a character that has an undeniable and unique appeal, but also who seems to be way harder to pull off perfectly than it may initially seem when getting into the character's on-screen releases or comics. Frank Castle's story is one that very much hinges upon stories that almost exclusively deal with as much violence as can be stuffed into a comic page, episode of TV, or feature-length film, but doing so without a lot of thought about how to characterize the vigilant or make the stakes feel genuine and high-risk, making him and his blood-soaked mission seem trite and uninteresting. Previously, it had seemed almost impossible for the MCU to have the Punisher appear in the franchise in a way that could genuinely appeal to fans of the character. The more toned-down age ratings and stories of the franchise would naturally have required much of what makes Frank Castle feel authentic to be cut away entirely from all of his appearances, losing some of the edge that's made him consistently popular. However, with the franchise's new move towards more adult releases and R-rated success with Deadpool and Wolverine, the future seems far more limitless than before. As such, the upcoming MCU Punisher spinoff, leaning into the darkness and brutality of the character and original series, seems all the more promising too, since the potential for Frank Castle's future to expand in a far bigger franchise that has the opportunity to adapt many of his biggest comic stories seems greater now than ever. While we can't know exactly what Marvel's future holds for any of its characters quite yet, Jon Bernthal's promise is also one that looks like it could pave the way for even greater things years after the Punisher itself came to its end.